Hello, my dear and amazing friends. Welcome to the Rocketa podcast, where we will explore the vastness of human ideas, dreams, and aspirations. I'm your host, Alexander Marfunen, and today our guest is Ahmed Alrazi.
Hello, Alex. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Ahmed, I'm so happy to see you. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well after seeing you. I feel quite excited to see where these conversations take us to.
I know. I'm really excited to have this podcast with you. Since you're one of the closest friends that I have, I thought it would be an excellent opportunity for us to do this. So Ahmed, we'll start something simple. How's the semester going? How's it overall going?
Good question. You see, considering the fact that we're both law students, I think you can relate that right now we've entered exam season, and it doesn't get any better than this, really. You get to experience the top tier experience of a stressed law student. Late nights, studying, and all that shebang. It doesn't really change, but it just gets harder and harder every single year. But overall, I feel quite relaxed and just trying to get there. What about yourself?
Oh man, I would say likewise. It's going steady. Of course, the pressure of exams will begin to press on us, and given that the exams are coming up literally in 5 days?
Yeah.
Something around like this. Yes, the pressure will definitely add up, but I don't think it should be a problem.
Yeah. I mean, you see, the thing is, I'm not doing my exams. I'm actually doing essays instead.
Yes, you're doing like this alternative thing.
Pretty much, where I'm given 7 days to do both. It's like an essay-based sort of exam. 7 days, 2 essay questions, one for each module. That's around like 7,000 words in just a matter of a week.
Oh,
if you think about it like that, they say it does they say it reduces stress and all that, when in reality, it does. I mean, I don't really see how that's going to help out, but whatever happens.
But I was thinking, but on the other hand, you don't have to you're not in this sort of, you don't have this time frame of like 3.5 hours or anything. You're given plenty of time to just sort of relax yourself into it. You can read the question without having to rush through it, and you do it at your own pace. Well, we have to we have a limited amount of time. We have literally like an hour, just a bit over an hour, just to read the question, give like a very sufficient answer. But you're given like so much time. It's so nice. It's so relaxed.
Yeah, you see, it is my first time taking on this alternative method, and honestly, if you think about it that way, that's more than if you think about 24 times 7, you're looking at around more than 100 hours.
Yeah.
To do an essay question. But yet again, I did ask one of my professors, how are you gonna include every single topic from the semester into one essay question? And they're like, oh, we'll figure it out one way or another.
Yeah.
So honestly, I don't know, it could be easier, it could be harder, but whatever it may be, the stress and pressure is still there. I still got to study. I mean, I know I've been there. Remember the days of second year and first year?
Yes.
3.5 hour exams? Those were hectic, to say the least.
Indeed.
Yeah, but honestly, luckily we did pull through pretty well. But overall, looking at it from that sort of standpoint, it's my first time. I'll see what happens. It could be better, it could be hard. Who knows? I mean, it's supposed to reduce the pressure.
Yes.
Still, they're still supposed to examine me on everything. So we're still on the same boat somehow.
Yes. Different levels. There's pros and cons.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's pros and cons. And how's your life, society-wise? Have you joined any? Are you part of any society, or are you taking part or in anything?
So, if we talk about my history, when I was in first year, I started up the Poet Society. it's a society dedicated to poetry. And I
Yes.
think a lot of people are aware of that. I took that society on for a solid year and a half, and then I let go of it and took on the MENA Society as president, the Middle Eastern Northern African Society.
Yes.
And coming down to probably midway of this semester, I had to stand down from my position as president due to, the stress and pressure of my academics. And
Yes, of
honestly,
course.
it's a matter of just rearranging my priorities. Overall, am I taking part in any societies at the moment? Not necessarily, but I do like to attend, the Creative Writing Society from time to time, and
Oh, really?
the society. Yep. I mean, considering the fact that they're the only people that actually take on poetry as among one of their many activities. I just go
Okay.
there from time to time. They had a poetry workshop last week, which was quite nice, and I
Really?
attended. Yep, it was lovely. So,
Did you enjoy it?
oh, I loved it. They always do a brilliant job at arranging these workshops and events. It was a pretty good workshop. But yeah, I mean, anything that's like, say, creative writing wise, I tend to always take it on.
So you'd be a creative person, more like a very creative person, and I know that's simply because you write poetry and you write plenty of it, and you've done it for a long time, haven't you? It's been a passion for a long time now. So could you tell me about where did this passion for poetry arise? What made you start it?
So essentially, I like to elaborate and emphasize. I mean, show my feelings or emotions through poetry. In
Yeah.
the sense that it's been something I've been taking on since the 8th grade, which you could say back when I was like 13, 14 years
Wow.
old. So I've been taking it on for quite some time now. I began off writing English poetry, then I moved to Arabic, and then I took on both. And essentially, you could say it was a coping mechanism back when I was in middle school. I dealt with a lot of bullying, but poetry pretty much helped me convey a message to myself
Yes.
that everything will be better. And that was pretty much that was how it all began. And then one thing led to another. Then I started taking on, I used to attend events in which I would recite poetry to the public. People really liked it. I recited a poem in my graduation in high school. Got a lot of attention. It was pretty much like people liked the poem a lot. And then coming here to Scotland, I've recited poetry in many occasions in public events, and yeah, I mean, it all stemmed back to something that I used to deal with negatively, which was bullying, and I just considered poetry to be like my exit from all of that.
That's actually a very interesting thing that many artists can relate to, because any artist, whether it's music or poetry or just literature in general, a lot of what people were writing or were creating came from a lot of pain or suffering, because that's pain is I would say it's easy to it's easier to convey it. I would say, in a way it's easier to write about it. If you notice that all very famous poetry or all famous writings, they have very often very sad topics, or very deep topics. So in a sense, this is you, in a way.
Yeah, I'd say that it is part of my personality, and at times I tend to think to myself whether or not it's something that's generational. I inherited. My dad was a poet. My grandfather was also a poet.
Whoa.
So I'm not entirely sure if my great-grandfather was a poet, but I can reassure you that I do come from a background of poets. From my mom's side, my uncles, they were also poets. They'd write a lot of poetry back.
Oh, wow.
Back when they were adolescents. Yeah, I mean, creativity, to an extent, is inherited. It just depends on like how you pretty much approach it. But for me, I think I had to reach to a certain point, a certain degree of emotions in order to pretty much write them down onto a piece of paper, have them rhymed, and have it rhymed, and just have it balanced on a certain metric system and all that, and all that, that poetry shebang and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, alike to many artists, does stem from a certain emotion. For me, it was I'd say, the pain of bullying. You could say that.
Yes.
And that just changes over time. So, I've written so many romance poems. I've written a lot of wisdom poems as well. So I've got plenty. I've got a plethora, a lot of variety.
So a wide range,
Yeah.
wide range of topics. And whenever you write, do you enter some state of flow, or what happens whenever you write, or because with a lot of artists, there are moments whenever they just enter into this zone where they don't see anything, they don't hear anything else. They're just they're concentrated completely on what they're doing, and it sort of flows. Everything flows out. Do you enter these sort of stages, or do you have this sort of these moments whenever it just comes out? Just
You see, you remind me of a poem I wrote not so long ago, and it was pretty much a poem dedicated to my pen. So I've got a pen that I use specifically for writing certain poems. So I wrote a poem for my pen in which I tell my pen to take on my thoughts and write them as smooth as it can. How do I approach poetry when I sit down and I write a poem? I just let my feelings, I just release all my emotions onto that piece of paper and let my pen take on its job to write that down in a proper and understandable, at least somewhat understandable way. And I think that, honestly, in my opinion, I don't think people who write poetry should restrict themselves to putting themselves under a lot of concentration when it comes to writing poetry, because poetry in the end is pretty much you reciting. It's you writing down. At least you putting a message to yourself. You gotta show yourself and be yourself really when you're writing down these words on a piece of paper. So when I write poetry, I tend to be relaxed, and at least you could say, in a sense, I try my best to show my emotional side in a very serene manner.
in a serene manner.
Yeah.
Wow. Have you ever? Well, I did hear from you that you did want to write a book or publish your poetry. Do you still consider this, or?
As a matter of fact, I'm actually working on that book right now. It's called The Nights That Cried Ink. It's been an ongoing project since 2023. I've sorry, and pretty much consists of 25 poems and 5 chapters. So in each chapter there are 5 poems, and for each chapter there's a certain theme. Like chapter 1 is going to be romance, chapter 2 is going to be wisdom, and so on. And I am working with a publishing team based in Glasgow.
Oh wow!
And I've already got like 15 poems.
So you're coming there. You're nearly there.
Pretty much, yeah. But it's gonna take me some time to finalize everything. I might begin off with an ebook before having it physically published.
Oh, just to see how it does, or
Yeah, test it out. It might be released on Amazon, Kindle. It could be out there. It could be. God knows where, but hopefully it's going to be published online.
Will you be voicing it?
That is something that I'm going to leave for later down the line, after we get the initial, after the initial publication comes out.
Yeah.
But I think I might be making an audiobook in the sense that it's recited properly, because I do follow a very unique strategy when it comes to reciting my poems, in the sense that for certain moods I tend to give a certain tone. Get what I mean, and I might have an audiobook, out there, recorded for the book.
Ahmed, I was wondering to ask you, what advice would you give to a person starting to write poetry? And do you think that anyone could become a poet, or do you have to be at a certain stage in your life, or you should be experiencing something? Or I'm not too sure. Are there any conditions to becoming a poet?
No,
No.
There's no conditions, and the only advice I can give to a poet is, I mean, there's a difference between writing poetry and being a poet. A poet is a person who dedicates a good portion of, who dedicates revealing his feelings or their feelings through poetry. And the person who writes poetry is the person who just writes from time to time. So essentially, my main advice, I mean, for anyone who's starting poetry is to go with the flow. Don't follow, if you're going to begin off, don't follow anything specific. Don't be restricted by anything. Let your emotions flow out smoothly like a river. At the end, it's you on that piece of paper, and you should never be told otherwise to follow a certain. So that's why we have free verse poems.
Yeah.
However, in a sense, it's an art, and everyone has their own unique way of approaching it. But main advice: be yourself, and don't be restricted by anything.
So no rules.
No rules.
Do you think someone would benefit from studying poetry or like studying other people's work or?
For inspiration, yes.
Yeah, inspiration.
We've got English students in this university who study poetry, who study Shakespeare's works, Edgar Allan Poe's works, and so on. I mean, realistically speaking, there's nothing wrong with studying it if you want to learn more about how these great poets came about.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, yet again, you shouldn't be restricted. You can take them on as inspiration. I mean, if I were to look up to a poet, I'd look up to an Arabic poet named Mutanabbi. He wrote beautiful poems, and his way of, reciting and all that and whatnot was quite admirable, and I took him on as an inspiration. But that did not change the way I approached my poems. I always kept a unique approach to how I write and recite my poems. But there's nothing wrong with it. On the contrary, it's something that you can gain from, that you can learn how to, write in a certain manner. It's pretty. It's a hobby.
Yes. Ahmed, I don't know if it's too much to ask. Would you be able to recite like one of your poems? Just I don't know if you would be all right with this, but I just really like to hear at least one of your works, even if it's something small or I'd like to hear you.
Sure.
You.
Sure.
I'd like to hear your soul.
I mean, I'd certainly love to do that. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's possible.
I'll actually grab a poem here. Are you looking for anything specific? I got romance.
Whatever you want. In the end, I want whatever you feel comfortable with reciting. It's completely up to you, but I'd like to hear you.
Okay. Sorry. I've got this poem. It's a romance. It's a love poem, actually.
Oh, nice.
So it's called A Untold Story.
Untold Story.
And it goes like this. Ask the sword that drips ink. Ask the shield that holds thoughts about what the knight thinks about all the wars he lost. A war between him and I, on a battlefield drenched in tears, his body shall lie, with his fists both clenched. Let me fight a war, its bounty, your smile, your heart and eyes, to see a soul live with jaunty, free the knight and his cries. I see beyond the sadness a land so vast and beautiful. Its sun and clouds you harness, with your smile it shall be full. Cry not and lose your diamonds. Tears of diamonds give a rich man little, but to a poor man, to his heart, sirens of despair and worry, no middle. Answer to the heart that welcome one and keeps away all the other. Answer, and the love shall come. Is it 1, 2, 3? No, only one comer. Let the heart walk in your garden. Let the heart feel your presence. Free it from the evil of a jail warden. Free it from the jail of absence. A poor man who gives a lot gives with a hand of gold. For I give you a small pot. In it my heart, a story untold. A story of a knight and his wars. He lost, the battlefield drenched. In his tears of sad, he ignores with both his hands clenched. That pretty much Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Oh, class, Ahmed.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Wow.
It's the thing about this poem. I consider it to be among one of my. I'd say my. So I like to categorize each poem into a certain category. I'd say this is among the better poems in which I like to recite and look back at. What's so unique about the poem is the way that I began off. If you see the second stanza, I say, a war between him and I on a battlefield drenched in tears, his body shall lie with his fists both clenched. The last stanza pretty much sums that up. A story of a knight and his wars he lost, the battlefield drenched in his tears of sad he ignores with both his hands clenched. I pretty much so it's a war between him and I. There wasn't any result, like what happened after that war, who won the war. And then I concluded, it's pretty much the war of love. I concluded with a story of a knight and his wars. When you look back in the second stanza, I say him and I. Him being the wars and the knight is me. He lost, so pretty much the knight he lost. And the battlefield is drenched with tears of sad, but he ignores. Who ignores that? The person who ignores that? Him. He ignores it, and he has both his hands clenched. Men, when they get mad and they want to hold in their emotions, they clench their hands.
Yeah.
And they don't want to reveal it to anyone. They just clench their hands, right? You've been in that state before.
Oh yes, as a certain stages. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, as a man, if you don't want to reveal your emotions, you clench your hands and you just keep on walking. And that's how I like to express it. And I go back to free it from the jail of absence, and free it from the evil of a jail warden, and so on. That pretty much shows how, for me, as a person who's trying to express his love to this other individual, it's presented in a way that I can't really show because it feels like I'm being restricted by something. There seems to be a wall, a fence between me and trying to achieve that aim.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much like a war between myself and love, and it's just packed with emotions. It's a lovely poem, and I absolutely I consider it one of my greatest works, to be honest with you. But yeah, that's
it's very visual. Like as you were reading, you can almost visualize everything and what's happening.
Pretty much. Yeah.
It's amazing, Ahmed. And when did you write that? Was it something recent or is it something that goes?
I think it was like 6 months ago.
6 months ago.
Yeah. Well, it was back when I'd say I'm not entirely sure when, but I think it was during the summertime.
Summertime. Oh, wow. And but about summer, you're from the UAE, yes?
Yeah.
United Arab Emirates.
Bingo.
Yes, that's perfect. You were born there.
Yes, I was born there, and I moved to the States when I was 3 years old, and I went to elementary school in Florida, and went back to the UAE when I was 10 years old. Hence the accent.
Oh yes, I can definitely hear it, And how would you describe life? Well, your personal life in the UAE? Because you have a lot of connections to the UAE. You're very patriotic, very nationalistic about it. You seem to be very, very proud of your country. So, could you explain to me like life in the UAE?
So essentially, you could say, in essence, I do owe my life to the UAE. I was raised there. I finished middle school and high school there, and the country's given me and my family a lot, and they still provide for us in many ways, and they've given us I'd say a quality to life, in which we feel relaxed, sustained at all times. We never feel that there will be a second, or there's in a shadow of a doubt that they won't be there for us, in the sense that the government is very generous. They take very good care of its people, and considering the fact that my mom works in the government and my dad is a professor, we could say we come from among the more appreciated categories. You could say classes of society, and the government, of course, rewards people like that. And ultimately, I've been raised to love my country and to appreciate it for the things that it's given me and my family. How was life living there? Well, you could say I don't recall much of it when I was 0 to 3 years old.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah.
But when I came back from the States to the UAE, essentially, you could say I was put in an environment I wasn't used to. I didn't know much Arabic at the time, which pretty much it it altered the way I communicate with people. I was a relatively social kid back when I was in the States. I'd love to talk to many people, but when coming back to the UAE, I didn't know much Arabic, and that was pretty much the first language spoken in that country, in the country. And hence, I dealt with bullying. People were calling me out for the fact that I was not an Arab, and that really got to me. I didn't really make much friends at the time. I mean, I began off, you could say, I could tell you this, I only had like one or two friends at the time, and that lasted for a solid 3 years. And eventually, I picked up on the language, and believe it or not, what's it called? I became a lot better than everyone else in Arabic. I got higher grades than everyone else in Arabic. Yeah, I was a quick learner, and I recited Arabic poetry. And learning Arabic poetry isn't simple. It's among the hardest forms of poetry to pick up on. And people were astonished by the fact that I didn't know Arabic when I was 10, when I was a kid. And looking back at it now, I realized that you can't blame your circumstances for why you cannot adapt. It's a matter of you taking initiative. That's why, if for example, per se, I think you've heard of the fact that whatever you can't control, simply leave it, and whatever you can control, figure a way. Ultimately, that's how I thought about it. I thought to myself, all right, I've got the tongue. I can speak Arabic to a certain extent. I just need to pick up more on like certain aspects of the language. And that's exactly what I did. I began reading books. I watched videos. My parents as well, they helped me and my older brother out in getting private teachers to the house and private tutors. And I'd study. And as the years passed, I became better and more fluent in Arabic, where it reached to the point where people would not even suspect that I even spoke English, or that I've never known Arabic when I was a kid. So it's a matter of just taking on initiative, taking that step forward. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think that's something that you can relate to as well. I mean, we've all had our own experiences.
Oh yeah, everyone.
But yeah, that's ultimately it.
Yeah, everyone at some point. Yeah, I can definitely relate to you on a level. Coming back to your country and having to start from zero in terms of your language. It's definitely it's a tough thing. But whenever you're small, I don't think you appreciate the difficulties. Only whenever you get older, you can actually look back and appreciate, oh wow, I've actually went through a lot of hardships. So I guess maybe after many years, you probably looked back and realized, oh, wow, I've went through a lot.
Yeah, that is true. But however, I'd say if there's one thing that I want to make clear is the fact that I am grateful.
Of course.
For a very good portion of my life, we lived in abundance, and we still do. And I'm beyond grateful for this fact. And looking at it right now, if I were to compare myself to anyone else, I'd say my difficulties are very trivial compared to theirs. I've heard, in the sense that it's right when you attain a certain age of maturity, self-awareness, you realize, oh, back in the day I dealt with so-and-so, and these were actual difficulties that you passed. No one will live a life without facing at least one difficulty or one, what you could say, trial, whatever it may be. And realize, looking back at it now, regardless of whatever has happened, that's all in the past now, and everything's been fixed. Hence, I like to look forward. I like to be optimistic. Something that it's a solid key piece of advice that should be pushed to everyone is the fact that the sun will always shine brighter on another day.
Yes.
And it's not going to rain for the rest of your life. It's simple.
So you just simply don't look back. You just go on with life without actually looking back.
Pretty much. That's how it is. I mean, not entirely. You're not supposed to let go of the past completely.
Yeah.
Learn from it. There's something that comes about from the past.
The lessons.
Yeah. If you think about it from a metaphorical point of view, let's say, for instance, you know how the roots and you got the tree, right? The trees and the roots. The roots aren't seen, and they're not seen for a reason. Because if you were to see trees and the roots exposed to the public, people would be scared of a tree, right?
Yeah.
But they're hidden for a certain reason. They're the ones that came about in the beginning.
Yeah.
They aren't neglected. They help build the tree, and the tree is what's shown to the public. And then you got its leaves, you got these defined characteristics of the tree. But the roots, even though they came about from the start, which is so and so the past, if you were to compare it in that sense, they're hidden for a reason. But they still support the tree.
Mm-hmm.
So you got strong roots, and you got a strong tree. It's as simple as that. I mean, that's the basic, I'd say, metaphor for if you were to compare past, future, present, and so on.
Mm-hmm. So a large tree must have strong roots.
And the roots are not to be neglected.
Not to be neglected.
But they're hidden for a reason.
Ah, yes. Because that would represent the past, yeah.
More or less, yes.
Oh, wow. and may I ask you, how's life in Florida? Because it's definitely completely different from life in the UAE.
Yes, I mean, looking back at it, I went to elementary school there, and I lived the American childhood experience. Mm-hmm. It was among I'd say, one of the blessings that I had in this life, in the sense that I was exposed to both this and that. But life in Florida, it was, I'd say, a lot. It was very colorful.
Yeah.
Even though I don't remember much of it, I remember for a fact it was pleasant. Mm-hmm. I lived all that. I mean, I Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and I went to Busch Gardens, Chick-fil-A. I went to all these theme parks. Orlando was like an hour away.
Really?
And we'd go like once a month or as a family. And I went to Disneyland or Disney Park. I don't know. I went to Universal. I went to all those amusement parks. It was a really, I'd say, precious time in my life, in which I don't recall having any problems at the time.
Yes.
And elementary school, absolutely loved it. They had like movie nights every week, and it was, I mean, the American childhood experience is something unlike any other. Mm-hmm. The neighborhood, the days. I mean, I remember time that, being with the neighborhood kids and all that.
Yeah.
And I went to California. I went to New York as well with my family. It's a lot. I mean, it was a pretty pleasant experience.
So do you still go back to Florida?
I unfortunately haven't been back ever since leaving it. However, I've been to the States many occasions.
On many occasions.
I was in Michigan last summer, and I was driving between Michigan and Canada.
Yeah.
When I went over the summer, and I was in California last winter. I mean, I was in New York a couple of years back, so I've roamed the States a handful of times.
Wow. You've traveled. You've pretty much been like all over the globe, like every side.
I mean, pretty much. I'm yet to explore Asia though. I haven't touched Asia.
Very vast.
It's massive. However, I've been to many parts of Europe. And the Middle East, I've explored a good portion of that as well, and the Americans as well. I've went North America.
Yeah.
I've explored all that. I'm planning to go visit Mexico.
Mexico.
Mexico, yes. I'm trying to plan that out. It's on my bucket list somewhere, but I'm trying to, plan that out.
So next destination is Mexico, and if you had the chance to go anywhere you like in the world, where would you like to go?
I'd say I would love to go to I'd say the Himalayas.
Yeah, Himalayas.
I've always had. I mean, I've seen videos of the Himalayas, and I've always wanted to see it and check it out for myself. And a lot of people say a lot of good things about it. It's pretty cold, I'll tell you that.
Oh yes, pretty cool. It's an understatement.
Exactly. But overall, it's a nice place to go visit and just refresh and just let go. It's. I mean, I've seen the videos and all. I'm like, this is a place I want to go to.
The Himalayas are where the tallest mountain is Mount Everest. Would you like to participate in mountain climbing or climbing? No.
No, I visited just for
just the views.
Views, yeah.
Just appreciate the nature, the raw and unfiltered nature.
Pretty much, yeah. But you see, right, the thing about traveling, it opens your mind. Let me get into that. The more you travel, especially at a young age, the more your mind opens, and the more you become more tolerant, the more you establish tolerance within yourself towards other people and how their minds react to certain situations. Having been raised in both Middle Eastern and Western dynamics, I've realized that the key benefit from all of this, especially considering that it was at a young age, was the fact that later down the line, I've developed a very open mind, become a lot more tolerant. My tolerance for everyone, in the sense that where they come from, their religion, their background, their race, is a lot more higher. It's exponentially higher.
Yeah.
And I encourage, if you're gonna have a kid later down the line, have them be exposed to more than one environment, more than one culture. Have them understand where certain things, how certain approaches are developed, how people approach certain things, without letting go of your roots, of course. That's one main thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it does help develop a solid and open-minded mindset.
It just makes them more flexible as individuals.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because as you said, you're exposed to different environments, different societies, different way of doing things, and you get to, what's the right word? You just know how to deal with you know how to deal with people better, because you'll know there's certain characteristics and what to expect of them, and how to perhaps avoid certain problems. So yeah, definitely.
I mean, I'll give you a good example, right?
Yeah.
So coming here, I had many instances, many occasions in which I'd meet people and see how they'd function in their lives. And I realized the difference between me and someone who's fresh from where they're coming from. It's their first time being exposed to the West.
Yeah.
I've seen their reactions and my reaction to how people perform their daily activities, their daily routines.
Yeah.
And one key difference that I realized was the fact that they have a very, emotionally, they have a very emotional response towards how they function. In the sense that, they're wrong and I'm right.
Yeah.
And that is what I like to call the closed-minded mindset. For me, I become more curious. I inquire more. I can say this. I tend to ask questions. Why do you do that? Well, where does this come about from? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? That's the open-minded mindset. You want to pick up. You want to acknowledge. You want to know more about it, so that if you see it again, you understand why they do it.
Yeah.
And that's what I realized. I mean, I've had many occasions here in which that has happened in Scotland, and unfortunately, till this day, we still deal with the fact that people can't accept the fact that people can present themselves through their culture, through who they are.
Yeah. So in other words, difference. People don't understand differences.
Unfortunately, yes. That is true to a certain extent.
To a certain extent.
However, it is slowly changing with the fact that globalization is coming.
Yes, of course.
Is coming about. And
more diversity. And
it's increasing rapidly throughout the entirety of Europe, Central Europe, the West in
Yeah,
general.
yeah. Plus, with the boom of social media, suddenly people can access information from all over the globe. There's you can access any video on any language.
You see, there is something about social media that I want to
Yeah,
tap off on.
go on
It's
ahead.
the fact that it is problematic. The fact that we rely heavily on social media
Yeah.
for every piece of information we gather and take in.
Yeah.
Ask me why. Why is it like that? Why is it problematic? It's because, you see, right, when you depend on something too much, you lose your true self. You lose the ability of thinking for yourself. If I were just to open up Google and ask Google for every single thing, or ChatGPT, or whatever it may be, for every small thing that I want to know about, your brain becomes a mush. What if one day we don't have any internet? Who do we rely on? That's why I encourage. I don't say that having I'm not gonna say that we go back to caveman times. No, I'm just saying it's best that you read a bit more into it. Read an article. Read. Don't expect a 30-second clip on YouTube to tell you everything about a certain matter. Read about it. Better yet, go to the library and pick up a book and read about it. Eventually, there will come about a time, and I believe, like, looking back at this, I'm using historical evidence to back up this claim.
Yeah.
The fact that even the greatest of empires that lasted thousands upon thousands of years have collapsed. What makes us better than those empires? What makes us better than those generations? In the sense that a day will come where we're gonna have to rely on books again, and through physical and on physical texts. And how I know I'm relying heavily on history and its examples, but I'm just being very realistic here. Is the fact that even though we do live in a time where technology is taking up pretty much everything, that doesn't diminish the fact that we still have to strive for knowledge and dig deeper through the more realistic terms, through the more realistic means. Sorry, like reading books and whatnot. That's pretty much my argument on why all of this, all social media, all that is problematic.
Yes, whenever we use it the wrong way, and whenever we, as you said, when we become too reliant on it, that's when nothing good turns out, because in the end you want to have original thoughts.
And another key issue that arises from social media and the overconsumption of it is the fact that when you look online and you start searching for a certain thing, a certain matter, there's a lot of preferences.
Yeah.
And when you take on too many preferences, you can no longer establish a preference yourself. You can't give an opinion anymore. You are putting your natural abilities as a human, as a rational thinker, in jeopardy. When you rely heavily on these sources. Oh, this person said that TikToker said this influencer said that. It's an issue, not for the public, but for the individual. There are certain issues that stem from this. If you're going to talk about the public, of course there is. But when you look at it from an individual scale, there is an issue in the way that it turns this rational human being, this human that has a brain, that makes it more, I'd say, mentally capable in taking on more critical tasks than an animal. You're taking this being and turning it into a mush, its brain to a mush. And pretty much you could say a person, there's a saying that a person who lacks control of their brain lacks control of themselves, and hence becomes a walking figure. That's pretty much who they are. They just fill the gap. And what makes us human is the fact that we can be unique. And when you rely too much on these sources and all that, you can no longer think for yourself. You can no longer be yourself. It's as simple as that.
Nowadays it's more just quantity over quality. It's more about it's about having more rather than actually enjoying more of less. Before we would have famous philosophers or famous scientists, which would have taken like years and years of their life to just create one theory, while now we can access it at the tip of at a swipe of our phone or whatever. In some sense, yeah, it's good. We receive this information like this, but on the other hand, we don't take the time to truly appreciate its essence, truly dive into it, perhaps make our own thoughts about this. We only care about consuming, and we don't actually take the time to chew or actually digest it in that sort of sense.
Exactly. And going back to what you just said about philosophers, looking back at it right now, I read about Greek philosophy for quite some time, and I realized that all these great philosophers, they had students of their own. They established schools of thought in which students can sign up for and learn from these teachers, these philosophers. And in the sense, these students only relied on them for their information. But here's the difference. Because it was only, you could say, one person giving them all this knowledge, they took them on as inspiration. They took them on as a foundation, right? So let's say, for example, give me a name of a famous Greek philosopher.
That's a really obvious one, but Marcus Aurelius.
Marcus Aurelius. He had his own school. And then you have other Greek philosophers who lived in his time, in which they had their own schools as well. They would teach students. A student wasn't allowed to go to 5 schools at once and learn from each. No. You would sign up for a school and you learn from Marcus, learn from him as a teacher. And you'd use him as inspiration, you'd build the foundation. Now think about it this way. If I were to be that student that would go to every single school at once, would you really think my knowledge would be consistent? No. You'd reach to that point in which you just rely on whatever anyone says. Simple.
Yes.
But there's a difference between taking on something for inspiration and relying on something. Taking on something for inspiration means you're going to take what he said and enhance it, using a bit of putting in your touch into it. Relying is just simply taking that knowledge and not doing anything with it, just keeping it in your head. Same thing goes for social media. Same story. If you have a bunch of these people telling you about a certain thing, you're not gonna be able to take on anything for inspiration. You've lost that key component of having a foundation for your own approach. You can no longer establish an opinion, and that's the issue. Too much preference leads to that. Lack of consistency, lack of knowledgeable consistency.
Yes. So we as a humanity are slowly beginning to lose our ability for independent thought.
Yes.
In a sense, we're as you said, we're becoming reliant on other people. Although there's nothing wrong in that. But again, there's an excess. Too much of something is bad.
Exactly.
So we must learn from these people what we need to learn, just the basics, and from then on, we need to create something of our own.
Yes, I mean,
or make our own presumptions, or
see, highlighting on the fact of too much of anything is too bad. That's correct.
Yeah.
Too much of anything is too bad. However, I'm going to give you a good example.
Yeah.
All right. I've met people who have deleted social media from their lives.
Yeah.
Completely, and I've met people who are so reliant on social media, it's pretty much their life. Here's the thing. People who have let go of social media, the first week or 2 weeks, they dealt with withdrawal symptoms. It's an addictive drug. Social media is an addictive drug.
Dopamine.
Because you are pretty much taking your brain and giving it to that, giving it to social media.
Yeah.
Information there. What's it called? Entertainment. It's all on your phone. It's all on social media. And when your brain's like, I'm not getting this anymore, of course you're going to deal with withdrawal symptoms, just like if you were to quit cigarettes. Same thing. And later down the line, they realized that social media was corrupting not just the way they were thinking, but their own personalities, who they are as a person. They lost touch in themselves. But later down the line, they picked up on the fact that they can live without social media. You can live without social media. I mean, our grandfathers and ancestors did, and they thrived in society.
Yeah.
And then I've met people who rely or are heavily reliant on social media, and all they do is they keep their eyes on their phones. They always say, text this and text that, and I'm gonna get a text from this person, I'm gonna get a text from that person, look at what this person said, look at what that person says. Their conversations become meaningless. They lack quality as a person. And this is my opinion, however it is based on personal experiences and what I've seen and how these people speak. They lack the the capability of presenting their own opinion. And there's certain extremes to this.
Yeah.
The utmost extreme is when you meet a person and you ask him, for example, what do you think of this and that? They'll be like, oh, this guy said this about that, hence I'm going to say this about that. They'll straight up tell you that, and I've met people like that before. And I'm like, oh my. So you as a person can't say, I think. Oh no, I'm just going to rely on that other person, what they say, because he's a lot more famous. He has something going on for him on social media, so hence I'm just going to rely on him. I'm just going to give myself to that person. I mean, if you don't consider that problematic, then there's an issue. I find that to be, very, very problematic.
Yeah, humanity is slowly beginning to be consumed.
It reached to a certain point, then there's always going to be fluctuations. There's always going to be changes. As I said earlier, the greatest of empires, they fell. Those that lasted thousands upon thousands of years, they fell. They come about new empires all the time. That did better than the other.
Yeah.
Simply, we're just living in another
empire.
Another empire, but we can't really pinpoint it because there's so much going on, a lot of ideologies, and it gets quite overwhelming because we've never reached this point in civilization to begin with. We've never reached this population.
Oh yes.
The more people you have, the more ideologies come.
Oh, yes.
And it gets quite difficult to keep up. But in the end, time will tell.
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. And whenever people become too consumed, it's really easy to control people.
Yeah.
That's why nowadays there's so many divisions. Like left versus right, the Republicans versus the Democrats, the conservatives versus Labour, and you've got so many other examples of this. There's always seems to be a divide. Humanity has never been at a point where it's actually united, unless there has been like a common threat.
Correct. Here is something that I want to present to you and to whoever's listening on to this, is the fact that if there's anything that I abide to, is the fact that unity is power. It's not an opinion. It's facts.
Yeah.
Unity is power. And let me give you a strong example on the fact that how we as a people, we're divided based on how we think and our ideologies in general. Let me give you an example. Today's modern day and age, we've got certain people who take a certain ideology, a certain approach. An example that I brought up once when I was writing, right? I tend to write here and there about certain things. Bring 3 people. One person who likes boats, another person who likes planes, another person who likes cars. Put each one of them in a room. This person will stick to making whatever he's making planes, making cars, whatever, making boats.
Yeah.
If you keep them in one room, isolated. Now, they don't know that They don't know that planes exist. They don't know this and that exists. Now, open the doors and have them meet. And they can make a rocket.
Yeah.
However, think about it differently. Tell the person who likes boats that planes hate you. And have them, like, make them hate each other. Make them meet.
Yeah.
And they're going to make nothing more than a wooden slab. It's simple. It's a matter of what you push onto the people. The left and right, very basic example of democracy. Tell the left the right hates you, and tell the right the left hates you.
Yeah.
They're not gonna get anywhere. But if you tell them that you guys can work together, you guys have similar interests. You guys want to achieve the same thing. We can live in a thriving society. It's as simple as that. Division. Right, I think you might have heard of divide and conquer before.
Oh, yeah.
Something that I'm not going to get into too much detail into, because I don't want to enter that type of, I don't want to touch that water.
Oh, yes, we're gonna go very deep into that. It goes very deep.
It's a very, very deep topic, but realistically speaking, the person that wins from this all is the person who, you could say, integrates the hate to begin with, who pushes on that hatred between the two parties. Another good example, men and women. Women hate men and men hate women. I mean, to a certain degree. I'm not saying that this is a fact. I'm not saying this as a factual statement. No. I'm just saying we see that in modern day times.
Oh, yes, of course.
The fact that there is some sort of, not sort of hatred, but there's a sort of dislike that comes about from both genders towards one another. When in reality, we're all human beings.
Yeah.
Yes, we might have our own certain personal experiences with the other gender, and that's understandable. But at the same time, when you look into social media, people, they say this, they say that about, and then you rely on their own personal experiences to back up your own claim. That's the issue. You're putting yourself into that division. You're purposely letting yourself being divided, letting society get divided through this. And I'm sticking to my main point. Unity is power. Diversity is a good thing. Unity is power.
Yes. Together we are strong.
Together we're stronger, that is correct. And if you don't have a means of having similar grounds between one another, establish one. Have one there.
Yeah.
Back during the times of the Romans, right?
Yeah.
The way that I mean, I'm not even going to get started with that. I'm going to give you a more modern day example.
Yeah.
Right? If you look at the United States of America, they have their armies, the Navy, their soldiers are incredibly diverse. You got people who are, you've got African Americans, you've got Middle Eastern Americans on the front lines, you've got European Americans, you've got all of them on the front lines. They're soldiers, they're all in the army. How does the government or the army have them stick hand in hand and be arm in arms together? They push onto them the fact that the United States relies on them, that they're United States. Words play a very, very central role in the way that your brain processes things.
Yeah.
The words united, the words protect, protector. When you keep on hearing these words, you realize, oh, okay, we have to adapt to this sort of unity, whether we like it or not. We've got to put aside our differences and stick to the fact that we're united. Hence, making the U.S. such a great nation when it comes to their defenses. Their armies will be very strong because of one key thing: the fact that they're united. Unity is ingrained within them. It's instilled within them in the sense that it's always brought about. United. The more they hear that word united, they subconsciously adapt to the fact that they are one. They're one body. If we were to take on this approach, I mean, looking back at it from the past, same thing applies, but it would differently. The Romans, how they used to do this, even though they used to have a lot of diversity within their troops, was they used to tell them, if you fight for your land, you're fighting for a good cause, you're fighting for the sake of Christ, you're fighting for Christianity. Everyone there was a Christian. They were brought about in Christian households. And that's what brought them together. Common grounds. Simple as that.
It just seems that the divisions are ever growing.
Yep.
So, and I don't think this will change. I think this will just simply continue. Unfortunately, it's a burden of humanity. Unfortunately, it'll just continue.
It is spiraling in a way, but I mean, what is there that man can do at this point other than try? But yet again, if you want to get anywhere, you should be influential.
Yeah.
And there's a saying in Arabic: the majority overcomes the minority. Even if the minority were to be the bravest man on earth.
Yeah.
If you're a one-man army, the majority will eat you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the strongest man alive and you were to fight 1,000 cats, you wouldn't win against 1,000 cats.
Yeah.
Even though a cat by himself, you can beat him.
Yeah.
1,000 cats, 20 million ants.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's the fact that with influence there comes more. What's called with influence, you can pretty much attain to a certain degree somewhat of a change.
Yes. Yep. I mean, we went very, very, very deep into society.
Yeah. I enjoy talking about society. And
I know.
my
It's,
inputs.
oh, Ahmed, thank you very much, Ahmed. The conversation was honestly is really, really interesting. Really interesting.
Thank you for having me on the show. There's a lot more to discuss if we're talking in more depth about.
Oh yeah, definitely, 100%. We can go on and on and on.
Yeah, I mean, but if you look back at when we were talking from the very start, from the poetry to myself to all that, there's one key thing that brings all of this together.
What is it?
The fact that a human, myself, I'm one person. I have the capability of being unique.
Yeah.
I have my own approaches.
Yeah.
And that's something I want to send out to everyone who's listening and those who are going to listen to this podcast. Is the fact that you can be unique. And if you can be unique, you can do a lot. You got a lot of potential.
Just be your own person.
Be your own person.
Exactly.
It goes down to you. That's it.
Definitely. Ahmed, thank you very much. Thank you so much for being the guest today. The conversation was absolutely invigorating. Thank you all for listening, guys, and we'll see you all on our next journey.